I built this Glock 19 clone for $499. What makes this build crazy is I'm including the price of the Holosun 507C X2. The first question is gonna be, well, how is that even financially or physically possible to do this entire thing for $499? We're gonna cover all that. I will put a list together for you. It'll be the first link in the description. I'll also pin that link in the comments. One thing that you should know, I didn't build this on purpose. This was a result of an accident. And what I mean by that was I was originally working on two separate builds. One was this frame and this slide. This slide is from Grey Ghost Precision. And the second build was gonna be more of a decked out PSA Dagger. But when I went to the range to test both of the builds out, this one with the Grey Ghost slide, for some reason this slide won't chamber around. I'm still working on trying to figure this one out. This one's actually kind of stumping me. While I was testing this pimped out PSA Dagger, I took the slide off and I put it over here on this guy, and this thing definitely surprised me. Now, this build is comprised of three things that I ordered. First is a complete upper. The second is the frame, which is a 100% serialized frame. There's no 80% frames in this video. It requires background checks. And the third part was an OEM lower parts kit. Now, I understand you're probably yelling at the screen and saying, wait, I thought you said the Holosun was included, but you only said you ordered a slide, a frame, and a lower parts kit. Hold your horses, guys. We're gonna get to that here in a little bit. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with the PSA Dagger, it's essentially a Glock clone that's based off the Gen 3 Glock, and they run about $299. They're pretty much the cheapest Glock clone that you can buy right now. And I did a review on this in the summer of 2021, where we put approximately 1,500 rounds between two daggers. This one is mine that I bought with my own money, and then Palmetto State sent out a tester that they were sending to different YouTubers, and every YouTuber put 1,000 rounds through it. So in that video, I did 350-ish rounds through this and a little over 1,000 rounds in the tester. And since last year, I have put probably another 1,000 rounds through this. So combined, I got about 2,300-ish rounds through the PSA Daggers with a sample size of 2. And so far, they've been running really good. However, since last year, when I published that first video about the PSA Dagger, PSA's been hard at work on producing a lot more parts and a lot more configurations for the Dagger. And now they have complete slides that come in a ton of different colors and configurations. Like as an example, you know, they have black, flat dark earth, OD green, they have gray. In addition to that, they now have 5 different types of slide cuts. When you're looking at the different slides that they have, some of them include barrels and a guide rod. Some of them only include the guide rod and the internals. Some of them include iron sights, some of them don't. Some of them have optics cuts, some of them don't. Some of them are cut for a Trijicon RMR/507C, and then some of them are cut for like a Vortex optic. And additionally, some have threaded barrels and some don't. But a few weeks ago, there was a particular complete slide on their website, and it was on sale for $399. And that was this guy. This is the Extreme Carry Cut slide. It has the threaded barrel on it, complete internals, suppressor height sights, and a 507C X2. That was $399. Regular price for these, if you get the threaded barrel, are like $420, but they have non-threaded barrel versions that are $399. This one, like I said, was about $20 off on sale. This is a really good steal, considering that these optics run $309.99 when you buy them on their own. Now, in order to complete a $499 build with the Holosun, there's 2 types of frames that you can choose from. The first frame is the Palmetto State Armory Dagger frame. Now these frames are $99.99 and they come with all the internals. You can simply just put a slide on it and go to the range and have fun with it. A couple things that I do really enjoy about the PSA Dagger frame: has some of the best ergonomics that I've ever felt on a Glock frame before. The edges are very rounded. It's not a boxy grip like most Glocks are. So if you're kind of Glock averse because you don't like the grip angle or you don't like the boxiness, then this grip might be something worth taking a look at. It has a really good single undercut under the trigger guard, that way you don't get Glock knuckle, and it has a Glock style rail so you can run the typical lights that Glocks can run. And we'll go over in more detail here in a little bit the pros and cons of this frame versus the pros and cons of this frame. So this is called the SCT Frame, and this frame is only $49.99. This frame is kind of a hybrid between a P80 frame, a Glock 19 frame, and the Strike Industries 80C frame that has been discontinued. I don't know if you guys remember the Strike 80C frame from a couple of years ago. I was supposed to get one, and then by the time I was about to get one, they discontinued them and I was SOL. But I always liked the way that they looked, and I always wanted to try one. Essentially, the Strike 80C was made by P80, but Strike Industries did a lot of functional changes to the grip, meaning more aggressive texturing. They changed out some of the scalloping on it, and they also narrowed down the trigger guard to be a lot more narrow than the P80s, because one of the reasons why you had to get a whole new holster with a P80 was because of how wide the trigger guard is. However, with these, they have a more narrowed trigger guard, which means it should theoretically fit a Glock holster, but we'll cover that more in detail in a bit. Second difference between this and the Strike 80 frame is the Strike 80 frame was an 80%. This is a 100%. And the third difference between this and the Strike 80 frame is this is $49.99, and I believe the Strike 80 frames were about $120 to $150. Now, if you are new to customizing Glocks or putting these things together or trying to, finagle them, sometimes whenever you put Glocks together, depending on where you get the parts from, sometimes you get something called tolerance stacking, and you're gonna have to do a lot of diagnosing on why the gun isn't running correctly. But now the question comes down to this: is it reliable? Let's see what happens. Now, between the slide being on this frame and the slide being on this frame, I have a total of 730 rounds between the two, with approximately half being on this frame and half being on this frame. And I'm happy to report that I didn't have a single malfunction between either one of these frames. I also tested the SCT frame as well as the PSA frame with this slide with a multitude of different brand of magazines from OEM Glock, ETS mag, and Magpul P mags. And I also tried a few different types of ammunition. I tried some 115 grain round nose, some 124 grain round nose, 124 grain NATO, and then I tried it with 147 grain. Every single type of ammo went right through this just as reliably as it would an OEM Glock. All right, let's try some aluminum cased, some Blazer aluminum 115 grain, see what happens. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now, I didn't test precision accuracy, but I didn't notice any inaccuracies. I was shooting from about 45 to 50 feet away from a steel silhouette that has a hostage popper, and I was able to hit the hostage popper no problem from that distance, and I found that I was just as good with this build as I am with my everyday carry gun. However, a handgun needs to have more than just reliability and accuracy in order for me to like it. Sometimes it just has to have the right feel. Talking about the PSA frame, the one thing that's very fascinating about this is I typically don't like rounded frames. In my experience, the only rounded framed gun that I've liked is the MMP 2.0. This is actually the new metal version. I just got it. We got a video coming on that in the future, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that video. But I like their rounded grips. They work for me. But like P320s, especially the original P320 grips, and some other brands as well, they just never worked for me. Although they feel amazing in my hand, I'm just not that great with them. But this one is another exception. This one molds right to your hand without a single hitch. You're able to really get a grip on it. To me, it feels like it was made for my hand. In addition to that, the texture on it is almost like this micro dot stippling. It's deceivingly grippy. Like at first you don't think it's gonna be too grippy, but then when you start shooting it, you're like, wow, that's pretty nice. And it's also easy to mitigate recoil with this frame because you have this finger groove right here, you have the undercut, and then you have this little lip on the front strap that keeps the gun from slipping out of your hand under recoil. Now, in regards to feel, the SCT frame is a bit of an anomaly. And what I mean by that is it's more blocky than a polymer 80 frame. And those are, kind of blocky. And when you first grab it, it doesn't feel as natural in your hand as the Dagger frame right here. And so whenever you're just holding this frame, doing some dry fire, it might feel a little bit weird or a little bit awkward. And for me, who likes blocky frames, that's really saying something. However, with that being said, whenever you start shooting the gun, it's almost like the gun starts melting into your hand in a good way and starts molding. I found that I was really able to mitigate recoil with this frame much better than I can with this one. And I think a lot of that has to do with having a textured ledge, but it also has to do with having a double undercutted trigger guard instead of a single undercut. This one also has a nice little ledge on the front of it right here. In the back strap and the front strap, everything is textured perfectly. It just seems strange that when you just hold it, it doesn't feel very comfortable, but under recoil, it feels a little bit more comfortable than this one, just in my humble opinion. And at first I thought I was crazy, but then I was at the range testing some guns with my buddy Mike from Tactical Considerations. He's not a Glock fan. He does not like Glocks very much. And he said the exact same thing when he grabbed it. He said it felt funny, but then I let him shoot it.
I haven't heard it. It actually does feel good when you shoot it, but at first touch, it's just like, it feels square. It feels like you're holding a box.
And he was honestly surprised at how flat it would shoot, how well it was able to mitigate recoil with it, and how good it felt in his hand under recoil. Now, before we go over holster compatibility with these frames, which types of holsters work with them, let's briefly go over the pros and cons of the Dagger frame versus the SCT frame. First, we'll cover the Dagger. Pro number one, it's only $99.99, including the internals. Pro number two, they now have a full-size frame available, meaning it's still a 19 size slide length, but it has the 17 size grip. So if you have bigger hands, there is an option for that. Pro number three, these are available in 4 different colors, just like the Dagger slides. You can get them in gray, black, FDE, and OD green. Pro number four, it feels great to shoot. It really does. It is a pleasure to shoot, and I enjoy it quite a bit. Pro number five, it's better for people who don't like blocky Glock style grips. Now, this isn't a pro nor a con. It kind of just depends on who you are and what you look for in it. It does have the hump back here, so you have more of that Glock style angle. Con number one, there are no magwells available for this grip as of right now. Con number two, because it has a Glock style Picatinny rail, you're very limited on the types of lights that you can run on here. You need lights that were specifically made for a Glock style rail. So if you have other types of lights, you're gonna have to get new lights. Con number three, it only has a single undercut instead of a double undercut. Con number four, it doesn't have a glove bevel right here, and I'll show you more about that here in a second. Con number five, and this is probably the biggest con to me, this rear pin here and the pin up here, front locking block, are extremely hard to remove. You need a really good hammer, a really good punch, and a bench block in order to hammer these out. And so taking it apart and working on it can be a little bit of a hassle because most Glocks can be just removed with one punch, no hammer, and this one can't. Now, go into the SCT frames. What are the pros to this? Pro number one is the price, $49.99. Now that doesn't include a lower parts kit. Pro number two is because this doesn't come with a lower parts kit like the PSA does, you can choose what brand of lower parts kit that you actually want to put into it. And so what I mean by that, so I always choose to run either OEM lower parts kits, or if I'm going to go aftermarket, it needs to be American made. It can't be the stuff made in Korea. Nothing against Korea, I've just had bad luck with their lower parts kits. Pro number three, it is almost identical to the Strike 80. So if you were like me and missed out on getting a Strike 80 before they were discontinued, now's your chance to have something very, very similar. Pro number four is you have a full Picatinny rail, and so you could put any light on here that your little heart desires. You don't got to worry about if it's only made for Glock or not. Pro number five, we have a double undercut instead of a single undercut, which does help in getting our grip much higher and being able to mitigate recoil. The next pro is this does have a glove bevel, and you'll notice this bevel that goes along my pinky here. That is so that if you have a gloved hand, it's easier to come from the index position down into the firing position. The next pro, which is actually really huge for me, is the textured and very deep accelerator / index points, or some people call them accelerator cuts. These are very instrumental in getting your thumb into there, so you can use it kind of like a gas pedal to push down on to reduce recoil. Pro number 8 is it has more aggressive texture than the PSA Dagger. Now, the next pro, and this is something that is undetermined. As I mentioned earlier, this frame is almost identical to the Strike 80. Theoretically, you might have to do some grinding on this front strap, but the Strike 80 magwells might fit it. And the interesting thing about the Strike 80 magwells, they're not discontinued like the frame is. I did order one, it just hasn't arrived yet, and so we will update that over either on the community page of this channel, or I'll make another video in the future. So that's a pro that you can get a magwell on this, but you can't on the PSA Dagger as of right now. Although there's a lot of pros to this frame, There's also a couple of cons. Con number one, it only comes in the G19 size. There's no other sizes available for it as of right now. Con number two, there's only one color as of right now, and that's black. Con number three, as I mentioned earlier, it kind of feels funny when you're dry firing it or just holding it, but thankfully that transforms when you start shooting it, and I've only confirmed that with myself and one other person, so to each their own. But for 50 bucks, what do you got to lose? Now, there is one last pro to both of these frames when it comes to holster compatibility. So I tested both of these frames in a couple of my different vacuum formed Kydex holsters. Now, most of my holsters are light bearing holsters, and light bearing holsters are a lot more forgiving when it comes to holster compatibility because they're made a little bit wider. This was some of my OG holsters that don't have a place for a light, and I tested the SCT frame. This frame goes right into here, no problems. Threaded barrel is able to stick out the bottom because I cut a hole there. Not an issue at all. Sometimes you might have to play with the retention on here and, you know, loosen it up or tighten it down when you switch between guns. But I don't have any issues with this fitting. And so without a weapon light on it, this fits every single holster I have. This one's molded for an APLC. Fits no problem. I have this one extended in case I decide to run a comp. So that one is 100% go on every single holster. The Palmetto State Armory, without a light, I can put it into this holster and it does go in there quite well. It is more of a snug fit than the SCT frame, but the PSA Dagger frame does work in them, but you do have to do more adjustments to your holster with the retention level than you do on the SCT frame. With the M-Force on there, it also fits this holster pretty good, but it needs to really be adjusted with the retention on it to make it work better. All in all, both frames, with and without lights, do fit standard Glock 19 holsters. However, if you're tired of buying a ton of different holsters, I do have one little recommendation, and that is this guy called the MSP holster. I will have a link to it over at the parts list, but this holster will fit any handgun that has a Surefire X300 or the new X300 Turbo on it. And this can be bought in two different ways. You can get it as just a holster, or you can get it with the mag caddy attached, which is the way I prefer to carry it. PSA Dagger, no problem. Goes right here, conceals like a dream. SCT frame with a Surefire X300, no problem. There's no adjusting the retention for these. M&P 2.0 metal. Here we go, X300, perfect fit. We have a 2011 or a double stack 1911. This is the Springfield Armory Prodigy. I'm working on doing a review for this. I borrowed it from a friend because I wasn't on the cool kids list when they were released. 2011 essentially. Best holster ever, especially if you like to run a lot of different guns and you don't want to buy a ton of different holsters, but you do like running a light, specifically the Surefire X300. So now the question becomes, which frame do I like better? I like the SCT better. It has 9 pros to 3 cons, at least in my book, whereas the PSA Dagger frame has both 5 pros and 5 cons. This one, I'm just able to shoot much better with it. I'm able to shoot faster, more accurately. It just works better for me. Now, what works better for you might be different, but thankfully these things are cheap enough that if you wanted to experiment and try them, you could at least get a good idea on what would work better for you without spending a ton of money. But if I didn't cover anything in this video that you have a question for, just leave it down in the comments. Either myself will answer it or somebody else in the comments can chime in. Also, if you want to know more information about holsters and how to conceal these things a lot better and more comfortably, then I highly recommend that you check out this video right up here. But until next time, guys, I love you. You guys stay sexy.